Hello and welcome to another edition of Nucleus Shortcuts. This is volume 11. Now, if you missed earlier episodes, not to worry, you can find them on our blog at nucleus.com/blog, nucleussec.com/blog, or on our YouTube channel, which is Nucleus Sec. And be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We're also at Nucleus Sec. Subscribe to our email newsletter, all that good stuff, so you stay up to date on what's happening and what's new with Nucleus. I'm your host, Adam Dudley, and today's topic is vulnerability triage. And today's expert on the topic is someone you might recognize if you've been watching the show for a while. It's Dave Farquhar. And Dave is a solutions architect here at Nucleus and someone with a vast background in vulnerability management. So welcome again, Dave. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thanks, Adam.
And do you want to do a brief introduction for the folks that haven't met you before through the show?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dave, and I like nothing better than making vulnerabilities go away. Yeah, but the question that I could never answer when all that I had was a vulnerability scanner was whether I had made the right ones go away. So I'm looking forward to showing how Nucleus could have made my life easier and made that argument a whole lot stronger that, yes, indeed, I made the right ones go away.
Nice. And that's a significant distinction, isn't it? Whether you made just a vulnerability go away or whether it was the right one, right?
Right. I could
Awesome.
make vulnerabilities go away all day, but were they the right ones?
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here again, Dave. Love having you on the show. So,
It was a pleasure.
awesome. Well, would you please kick us off with kind of for the 101 crowd here, like myself, with a brief take on what is vulnerability triage in the context of how Nucleus helps with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with the dictionary definition. Triage is assigning a level of importance or level of urgency. And it's a methodology that other security practices have been using for years, especially like incident response teams or security operations centers. The difference here is we're not investigating incidents, we're investigating and acting on vulnerabilities instead, and hopefully preventing incidents. So if we
Right.
do our jobs right. So the first stage is to figure out which vulnerabilities are more important. And for some organizations, that's all you really need. If you have a small network, like here, we have a small enough network, that's probably about all that we need.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do a second stage where you also factor in where those vulnerabilities reside. So, for example, I may have the same vulnerability on two different systems that deserve very different priorities. So some systems are absolutely business critical. And if that system's down, you're out of business. So if I have a system that processes credit card information and I have a system that serves up training material, both of them have the same vulnerability going strictly by the book, I probably want to fix the credit card system first.
Right.
Or maybe that training material is more important. So how do I tell Nucleus which of those systems are more important? And sometimes it's not as clear which system deserves priority. A web server isn't necessarily just a web server. They aren't necessarily all equal. And so Nucleus can help you to figure out quickly and at scale which
Got it.
ones.
Got it. Okay. So what I heard, so there's a couple levels here you talked about. So an organization maybe just getting started with a small network, they only need to worry about, just prioritizing the vulnerabilities they have. They're not so concerned about with that context of where it is. And then the second level of maybe sophistication would be like you want to add in that asset context and that criticality, so you have another dimension of triaging or prioritization, right?
Right.
Nice. Thanks for that. So the meat of our topic, which part, what part of vulnerability triage can users really streamline and or automate with Nucleus? Would you go ahead and jump into that for us?
Absolutely. So by default, Nucleus treats every asset in your subscription as equally important. And you have to tell us what's important. And we make that pretty easy. But you do have to go and set and tell us that context. Before you go and you give that context, you can do simple triage by just sorting your vulnerabilities by the criteria that you care about and addressing them in that order. So you can keep it that simple if you want to get started. And frequently that's good enough especially for an organization that just started. You want to get some value out of Nucleus in that first month. There you go. That's one way that you can do it.
Hmm.
You can do a whole lot worse than that. And if you have all you have is a scanner, just being able to do that could be a big improvement over what you have. But some organizations want to be smarter about it than that. And I've actually had more than one organization ask me, hey, I've got this list of crown jewels. How do I account for those in Nucleus? Now,
Now, is that a
crown,
technical term, Dave? Crown jewels?
right? Yeah, yeah, it's a technical term. Yeah, it's not. But the cool thing about that terminology is it doesn't have to be. Everybody knows that if it's called crown jewels, it's important to me.
Yeah.
So it gets the point across. So that's why I've heard more than one company, and these are completely independent of each other. And I've heard that terminology not just at Nucleus too.
Yeah.
Customers, when I was working at other companies, would use that. So I don't know how widespread it is, but I've been hearing it. And it's a great way to define what's really important to you. So if you've got a list of your crown jewels, what can we do with it?
Hmm.
Well, the answer sometimes is, well, make an asset group and put your crown jewels in it. We can do a whole lot better than that, though. And I've also had a customer ask me essentially the same question, but in a completely different way. They took the opposite approach to it. They said, hey, wait a minute. I've got this vulnerability, and I understand if this was on like a database server, yeah, this would absolutely be critical. But this is on a web server that doesn't have any data to steal.
Yeah.
So I don't want this to be on my list of my most critical vulnerabilities. How do
Yeah.
I take this off that list? And they
Yep.
didn't want to just go and mark it. They wanted Nucleus to do it for them.
Right. Right.
Answer is we can do that. We've got 4 attributes that we can set that will help you to define the difference between those. And if you'll let me take this crown jewels analogy further and make it even more painful,
By all means.
I can tell you the difference between your gold, your silver, and your platinum, even. And
Okay.
I'll even show you an example of that here in a little bit later. I'll show you some gold, some silver, and some pot metal.
Okay.
So, if nothing else, though, sometimes you don't have all 4 attributes, or sometimes you're not completely confident in all 4 attributes. Even if all you have is business criticality, just go and set your business criticality. And some companies say, well, I don't even have that. Well, yes, you probably do. Do you have a disaster recovery or a business continuity plan? If it's on that list, it's critical. It's business critical. If it's important enough that you know what you would do in the event of an earthquake or a hurricane or another
Hmm.
natural
Hmm.
disaster, that this is one of the first things you would fix, that's critical.
Got it.
You probably also know what your test systems are. If you don't, you're going to find out real quickly because your remediation teams are going to say, well, that's just a test system. Why do I need to fix that? Okay, thank you for that information.
Yeah.
So you go and you set those, and then you've got 2 ratings in between for everything else. If nothing else, they're going to come and they're going to tell you, the system owners are going to tell you how important those things are. So you can build
Right.
that out over time.
Got it.
If you've already got the data, yeah, go ahead and enter that in. And we can do that in a number of ways. You can set up asset processing rules if it's straightforward. It's a little less straightforward. You can use the API if you have API chops.
Hmm.
Last and least, you can set them manually in the user interface if that's all you have. And if you get one-offs, maybe that's the best way to do it. Besides the business criticality, you can set data sensitivity. That's also critical, high, medium, and low. You can set attributes for network exposure and for compliance scope. And the nuance, especially on those secondary ones, is this internal or external? Is it in scope or out of scope for compliance? Those help to give you that that nuance that help you to decide, hey, is this crown jewel or isn't it? And hey, is this gold or is it silver or is it platinum?
Got it. If I could interrupt real quick, Dave, something I'm curious about is these attributes in Nucleus. Where do they come from? Do they come from the field and best practices? Uh, where do these 4 attributes that we allow folks to set come from?
So they generally are industry accepted.
Okay,
They're basically the 4 things that help you to determine the importance of a system mathematically and quickly.
got it.
Um, and they generally will be things that if you ask the right person, they're going to know.
Got it. Thank you.
Um, yeah.
So
So
after a user has these attributes set up, what's next?
so once you have all of those set up, give Nucleus overnight to process it. Sometimes it happens really quickly, but generally I find it best to let it wait overnight.
Sure.
Nucleus will then factor that into its scoring. So when you look at the top risk section of the UI, which I'll show you in a minute, you see every vulnerability and its score. And it's every instance of that vulnerability, not just that vulnerability in general.
Right. Right.
So if you've set all 4 of those attributes and you go and you max out all your confidence level in all of those attributes, I've seen the same vulnerability on 2 different systems, one at each extreme, differ by 800 points. So it really gives you that nuance in there so that a critical vulnerability on your least important system probably isn't going to show up on your top risks until you are really far along and you just don't have much of anything to go and fix.
Right.
So taking Log4j as an example. So the most recent major cancel the weekend, cancel the holidays emergency.
Right.
If that's on your most important system, that's going to score in the high 900s or may even hit the perfect 1,000. That same vulnerability on my test system under my desk that can't do anything, and it's not business critical because it's just for me messing around
Right.
on 200.
Got it.
So in an ideal world, yeah, we would have Log4j fixed everywhere.
Yeah.
This isn't an ideal world. So hopefully it's on those systems like my test system under my desk that, hopefully that's where all of those are.
Got it.
You can use Nucleus to help prove that.
Right. And so what I heard there is really that, Nucleus has these built-in attributes and you can use them to weight the actual risk score of a particular vulnerability on a particular asset. And so the customers or our users can fine tune those attributes to make sure they're getting the kind of results they want in terms of prioritization.
Exactly.
Got it. Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Dave. Now you mentioned you'd be jumping into Nucleus, so would you mind giving us a tour of some of these things we've been talking about?
Sure. Let me share my screen here. Did it go? No, it didn't. All right. Can you see Nucleus?
I sure can.
Perfect. So first place we want to start is over here in the asset management pane. So I'm going to pull up a couple of systems here. So the first one that I'm interested in is a system called Win10 detection.
Okay.
So this is searchable. So that's just one thing to keep in mind here is we have a search bar up here, but this particular system I'm interested in happens to be right there on the first screen. So I'm going to pull that up and I'm going to click edit. I'm going to go to the risk attributes. Real easy to overlook. So in here, you can see that the system, it's in scope for compliance, has criticality of critical, data sensitivity of critical, network exposure is internal. So the system is inside my network, has protection of my network. But other than that, pretty important.
Yep.
So now I want to go and I want to pull another system up. Let me find that one, Win10 DT. So a couple up from there. And we'll go and we'll do the same thing here. And in this case, looks very similar. Critical on both the criticality and data sensitivity. It's in scope for compliance like the other one, but this one is external facing, rather
Got it.
than internal facing.
Higher risk, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So,
that,
so what I'm seeing here, Dave, is that the users are setting those individual risk attributes on specific assets, and that informs how Nucleus treats vulnerabilities on those assets in terms of risk scoring, correct?
correct. And you
Yep.
can see right here, hey, these systems have a different risk score
Hmm.
because the vulnerability counts are, well, here's the interesting thing. I just noticed this. The vulnerability count on this one's quite a bit higher than up here. And this is all demo data. Let me
Right, right.
emphasize that
Yep,
these are not real systems.
absolutely.
But you see here that this system has a larger number of vulnerabilities on it, but because it has a little bit more protection, its risk score is a bit lower.
Yep. All
So,
clear.
so the next thing that we want to do is look at vulnerabilities. Now, I picked one of these out ahead of time that we're going to be interested in, but this view, if you're not used to looking at vulnerabilities, you haven't been doing it for years and years, this view can look overwhelming because you've just got wall to wall
Thousands and thousands.
criticals here, and it
Right.
just scrolls for miles.
Yep.
So get back up here. I picked out ahead of time this 2012 1723 vulnerability.
Okay. All right.
And I'll show you the reason why I picked that one out. So if you go to vulnerability intelligence, so you see here, all right, well, it was showing up as critical because that was what the scanner told us when we pulled that data in.
Yep.
Mandiant rates that as a high. Now, that's not that Mandiant is trying to overrule your scanner. Mandiant is extremely stingy with its critical rating. So basically a critical, something that Mandiant will give a critical comes along every 18 months or so.
Right.
But Mandiant is also very stingy about giving out high as well. So
Yes.
in this particular environment, there's only one critical, log4j. So we're already taking care of log4j. So what are we going to take care of next? So this is not a disqualifying factor. The Mandiant only says it's high. Well, I only have one critical. So it's time to start looking at these things that maybe aren't quite as bad as log4j. Now, this instance has a recorded future integration in there. Recorded future's opinion on it, 99 out of 100. Okay, well, that sounds bad. And
Yep.
it is. EPSS is another, basically trying to predict if this vulnerability is sitting somewhere, what are the
Right.
chances it's going to get exploited this year? That's roughly the question EPSS tries to answer.
Yeah.
So 91%. Okay, not
There's,
something
there's,
yeah,
there seems
not
to be
something
some
I want.
consistency here.
Yeah, CBSS scored 10. So
Yeah.
10, it's a scale of 1 to 10. So it's as bad as it gets there. I do not live and die by CVSS by any
Right.
stretch, but hey, it's more confirmation. This is something that I need to be paying attention to. CISA BOD list. This is a list of vulnerabilities that CISA, a government agency, has told other government agencies this needs to be fixed, and here's a deadline to get this eradicated from your network.
Right.
So this is on that list. So yet
Okay.
another data point that good reason for this to be on the list of things that should be fixed.
Yes.
And also get the publication date here. We put this here because some scanners give us that, some don't. So we'll put that out there. In this case, this vulnerability is almost 10 years old.
Got it.
So yet another reason to get this out of here.
Absolutely.
So hopefully I've made a case for taking care of this thing.
I think the case is pretty strong.
Let's go to top risks and let's say, oh, wait a minute. Let me show you one more thing. I didn't answer one major question. How many systems is this vulnerability on? So if we go to instances, we've got 4. So, okay. Now, this is a Java vulnerability. This isn't just something that I can just go and blast that update out and not expect to break something. So, in what order do I need to fix these things? Would be my next question. So,
Got it.
done. I've got 4 of them. You'll see why I'm emphasizing that in a second.
Okay.
I go over here to top risks. And I search for it. And here we are. I said I had 4 of them.
Yep. 3 of them in top risks. Yep.
I have 3 in top risks. That 4th system, I happen to know it is internal, not in scope for compliance, not business critical, doesn't have sensitive data. So it did not score 900 in here. And in this instance, basically, if it's not about 800, it's not high enough to be in the top risks. So
Got it.
when that 4th system is your biggest problem, it'll be in here. Right now, it's not. So if we notice here, these names look familiar. So I've got my 2 systems that were maxed out for everything. I've got one system that was, this is basically internal versus external. So
I see.
Same system or same vulnerability, external facing system, internal facing system. It's 1,000 if I can get to it from the outside. It's 900 if it's inside the network. So
fantastic, Dave.
This just tells me here, all of these are important, but if you can't fix all of them today, you can't fix all of them the same day, fix these 2 first.
Got it. That's all clear. That was a fantastically clear walkthrough, Dave, about how, an actual workflow about how you would how you would triage and decide what to focus on first, second, and third. So thank you very much for that. And so before we wrap this episode, what from everything we've talked about here today, what would be your main takeaway for people? Say there's a security engineer, an analyst, or someone higher up in the organization. If they're considering a platform like Nucleus, what would you want them to take away from what we talked about here today?
So yeah, you can do some form of triage without Nucleus. There's even room inside the industry standard CVSS. There's even a little bit of room inside that to go and do some simple triage and swing that CVSS score. So that CVSS 10, if you plug the asset context into it, you might be able to knock that down to a 9.8 or a 9.9. But when I've tried to implement that in the products that allow you to do that, what I've found is that they aren't very forgiving. Most organizations don't have enough data to do that properly, and I can swing that value by 0.2 or something like that.
Okay.
It's not enough resolution is the complaint that I frequently hear about CVS.
Got it. Okay.
Nucleus is more forgiving. It'll work better if you have a lot of data and you have a high degree of confidence in it. But if all you have is a list of crown jewels, I could deliver a lot of value with that. Just set the business criticality there, tell Nucleus what you know, and we'll work with it. As you learn more, plug more in, and Nucleus works better and better over time. And it's just setting things to critical, high, medium, and low, or answering a couple of yes and no questions. You can do that with a couple of asset processing rules, or just go in and manually just answer the questions on those. I've never found any other tool that makes it that easy. So in an ideal world, you'd set all 4, but just work with the information that you have, and don't be afraid of keeping it simple. Just answering one of those questions is enough to make a difference and to swing the scoring so that you can start prioritizing.
Nice.
And as you get more data, chances are that it exists somewhere. And as people start to see that there's some nuance there, they're going to start asking questions like, hey, how come this system's scoring 1,000? This system doesn't deserve to be 1,000. Okay, fantastic. Tell me more. Tell me how you know that. Plug that into Nucleus. Now you've got more information. And now you can ask that person who told you that, hey, what else do you know? And just having a little bit of information and working with what you have is a great starting point to helping your other teammates to locate the rest of that data for you.
Nice, nice. So what I'm hearing is this a tuning process that happens over time as you gain more information about your systems and your environment.
Absolutely. Just tune it over time, have that feedback loop where you're learning more and you're getting more information, getting better information. You'll get better results out of Nucleus over time.
Great, Dave. Thank you so much. That's a wrap. Thanks so much for joining us again today. We'll share
Okay.
any relevant links in the show notes, including how you can get a free trial, take a demo, all that good stuff. And we'll see you on the next episode of Nucleus Shortcuts. See ya.
See you.